Hello and welcome to another Sunday Quickie repair video crossover type thing. I've done a couple of these in the last couple of weeks. First with that Atari 2600 that kept breaking, and then me last week trying to repair the childhood PlayStation 1 which I pulled apart as a dumb, young, stupid child. So if you haven't watched those, basically in these videos I've got a bunch of projects I want to get through, but they're not really sort of involved enough for like a full-on scripted video, so I'm doing this sort of Sunday Quickie type crossover where there's no script. So today we have this Sega Game Gear, which has appeared in a couple of videos. I didn't realize how long ago it actually was, but 4 years ago, I had to look it up, I modded this Game Gear to have composite video output using a mod chip called a GGTV, which is Australian made and manufactured by a chap named Tim Worthington, also known as etim online. But basically a feature of this is that it can also output RGB, which I said in that video 4 years ago, yeah, I might do in the future, but I think I, like quote unquote, I said my RGB setup is a bit on the piss. Anyway, my RGB setup is much better these days and I'm trying to actively move away from composite as much as I can. So the Game Gear is next in line. So we have a couple of things to show. So here is the remains of the GGTV kit. Luckily I kept the relevant connector and PCB. So basically we have a little, what are these video output? Not video outputs. It's video and audio. Basically, long story short, we'll be going to SCART. Anyway, that's a plug. the name, the type of plug is not coming to me right now, but whatever. And here is the little PCB breakout board that facilitates easy soldering. But this video will be more or less in two parts because the cable is a bit of a project in itself. So that's just some like cable sheath. Here we have the part of the cable that plugs into the plug. See, brilliant without my scripting to save me from saying stupid sentence structures like that. But anyway, that's one part of it. Here is an audio cable. It's for the audio part, obviously. And that will interface with all this bag of stuff. So there's the SCART plug, and this is the PCB. That's like a power indicator, I believe. And then we have the sockets for both the video and the audio. So I'll install the plug first, and then we'll build the cable. So yeah, cool. Let's get this thing apart. God. Okay, forgive the audio, I'm still figuring out this microphone. I've only had it a couple of weeks. I've just set the gain down to be lower than it was. I think it may have been peaking out a little bit before, so hopefully it's better and hopefully it's not too low, because realistically I'm not going to know for sure until I pull this into an editing package and, you know, start to edit it. But yeah, also sorry if my throat is a bit croaky in this video. Lucky me, got COVID for the second time earlier this week, so I am feeling a little bit better now. Much better than I was about 5 days ago, but yeah, that's the reason for that. Getting COVID sucks. Okay, I think that's all the screws. And then we just need to unplug these little white connectors here, which in this Game Gear I've done many times. So I'll just put that to the side for now. So we can see a couple of things here. Here's the GGTV. This is the input side, so this is all the stuff coming from the Game Gear. Gets processed through this chip and then goes out to the composite output. So if you want to know anything about the installation in regards to this area, I would highly recommend that previous video from about 4 years ago, which will of course be linked below. But we'll be focusing on this side, and then, I don't know, we'll plug the RGB port, maybe just up here if we can, right next to the composite. I think you can have the composite and RGB in at the same time. I didn't see any information to indicate that you couldn't, so we'll just try that first and see if it works. Otherwise, I have replaced the capacitors in this, like you should with all Game Gears, and it looks pretty rough. I did it a very long time ago. I think I was mentioning this in the video where I installed the GGTV. It's so important to keep the tip clean as you're soldering, because otherwise you just get these dirty connections. It all works, luckily, so I'm not really going to touch it, but it's pretty tempting to just, completely redo it from scratch just so it looks a bit nicer. So I've been trying to use my noggin and think of a good way that I can attach this socket to the Game Gear. And the more I think about it, the more complicated I think it's going to be, because the way this will basically secure itself into the case is by using this PCB. So I basically have to put it into place, then solder it while it's plugged into the case. And that's going to be very tricky. Like if I have this down here and I've got the socket poking through, to solder all those pins into place is going to be near impossible. So I was trying to think of a couple of different ways I could do it. I mean, I thought maybe I could attach it to this case, but then I would have this extra set of wires running between the two cases, and I'm just not very keen on that. I looked up a couple of other videos. Another guy has actually just attached it straight to the back plate here, so that it would come out the back. And that's a pretty good idea. It would make it easy to solder, but there is a metal shield there, and I'd have to take all this apart, and then it'd be a little bit janky. Anyway, so the solution I have is still somewhat janky. Basically, I'm going to have this already pre-soldered. So let's just plug this guy back into place. The two pins go on the bottom there. I'm just trying not to bend anything. I'm literally just going to drill a hole into the back, a small hole, just enough for the wires to go through. And the wires are just going to be bunched up. And I think I'm just going to tack this onto the back, something like this. Or maybe, actually I might even flip it around. So it's, because I'll be holding the Game Gear like so. Yeah, so I think, because they're just going to be basically held in place. It's going to hold the PCB in place. All the wires are going to come from these points here. So yeah, I think I'll just go like that, just draw the wires through, and hopefully the wires will hold it in place somewhat, but then I'll just glue it or something. I'm not entirely sure yet. Pretty janky, but it's the solution I got going. So as for the wiring itself, it's pretty simple. First, we just need to solder this into place, the socket into the PCB, like I said. And see these letters here, B, G, R, V, +5 ground. They just correspond with the tabs on the chip itself. So there you go, there's B, G, R, V, 5 volt, etc., etc. So that's my idea, and that's what we're going to do. So let's start by soldering this into place. Somewhat shockingly, I'm nearly out of solder. I've had this roll of solder since the beginning, and it's nearly run out. So if I run out of solder today, that will be a bit of a shock to the system. Not a problem I was expecting, but oh well, hopefully that doesn't happen. Don't really feel like going to the store and buying any more. All right, that was still somewhat complicated to do, even in this vise and everything, as easy as possible. I can't imagine doing that as it's sort of down in a case, and I mean, it's not impossible. You could do it, but it would require a lot of disassembly, and honestly, just not really that much of an advantage. Anyway, that's looking pretty good. Oh, that vise has got it clamped in good, but yeah, there we go. Easy. So I'll go cut up some wires now, and we'll start threading them through. And I'm starting to lose my voice. This is great. Okay, the incredibly boring task of stripping wire and tipping the ends is complete. And now we sort of just need to solder them into place. So they just sort of stick in here like so, and then we sort of just need to try and solder in the other end, I guess, while it's in place. So it's a bit It's a bit jank. Let's see how it goes. Yeah, I mean, that's it. Seemed to work, so I guess we'll do the next 5. Okay, so that was about as annoying as I expected it to be. Obviously the wires didn't really want to stay in place, but we got there. So here's our little group of wires that will go through the hole. So guess I better go out to the shed and get my drill. Okay, got my drill. Nice. Just gonna go with the 5mm bit here, and I don't know, I think I'm gonna drill it about there. So let's get those wires out of the way so I don't puncture through those, and without further ado, here goes nothing. Always the bit that scares me the most, if I'm going to be honest. Probably should have done a pilot hole first. This is harder to drill through than I realized. Yeah, I'm going to put in a smaller hole first, I think. Make it a bit easier. Oh, there we go. Alright, we've made contact with the inside of the case. So that's the 3.2mm bit. I don't know why I'm telling you the size of the bits. Just bragging that I use the metric system, I guess. Anyway, that may even be bigger. Nah, we'll make it a bit bigger. There we go. Cool. It's a nice clean hole. So let's shove these little wiry boys back into place, and let's see how this goes. So the idea, we want that away from the screen, so probably like this way around. Obviously one wire is longer than the others because it needs to go to the other side of the board, where the majority of the wires are going to the left-hand side of the GGTV. It's already getting tangled up with the existing wiring. But here we go. This is a bit jank, isn't it? Are these wires going to be long enough? Oh my god. I hope so. That could be a problem. I thought I made them long enough. So that one definitely reaches. How about the rest? Ooh, it's going to be tough. Oh, the furthest it's got to go down is the ground. Which one's the ground? That is the grey brownish one. So this one needs to go the furthest. And it looks like it's not going to quite reach, but that's okay. It's a ground. I can make that go into many different places. I think I'm going to have to write down what each color is because it's a bit awkward. Okay, I think I'm pushing it a bit with the wire lengths. I think they're just going to make it, so fingers crossed. But first we need to pre-tin the points on the GGTV itself. So that's about as straightforward as it gets. Most of them are already pre-tinned because they've been used for the composite output. So let's try with the hardest one first, R, which is green. I guess I should have used red. I wasn't really thinking that through, but whatever, doesn't really matter. So red is the green wire. So this is already a mess. Let's try and pull that across. You see, it's like, oh, it's just not reaching. I don't know how well that's coming across on camera. I don't want to have to like redo the cable. Let's make it work. Hey, it just fits. So it's keeping the plug nice and tensioned at least. Okay, that is pretty bodge, not going to lie, but I'll give it a beep test with the multimeter just to make sure that everything is where it should be, and then we'll look at putting this cable together. And the color blue, which is actually a grey wire because I didn't think that through. Okay, so that RGB kit I showed before is also purchased from etim's website, and there is a bit of assembly involved in that as well. So we need to unscrew that and then pry this connector apart somehow. I'll try not to wreck it in the process. There we go, bit of a pop. There we go. Oh, it actually like folds out. I've never looked into a SCART connector before. So I'm just following the instructions on the website, which I will of course link in the description. Basically, a hole has already been cut out for the PCB to stick out of, but we do need to cut these three little stumps here. What do they call them? 3 plastic pegs, not stumps. So we'll just use some flush cutters for that job. Shouldn't be too hard. There's 1, 2, oop, across the room it goes. Alright, not sure why they weren't already pre-cut, considering he went to the trouble of cutting the hole for me, but whatever. We also need to cut this down to size. Again, not sure why it isn't already pre-cut, but maybe I just shouldn't be so lazy. But of course, the longer leg is the anode, so we'll just, how much is he cutting it there? About that much. We'll just keep out the longer leg so we know which one's which. Again, debris flying around the room. Ooh, that might have been a bit too short. Oh well, I've got drawers full of LEDs if that's an issue. So place the pin block into the shell half, which has the slot cut into it, which is this one. It fits into the groove in the shell. Insert the circuit board into the pin block and shell. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so that sits in there like that. And then we need to solder the LED in. Okay, so basically we need to temporarily put it in the shell so it's easier to solder into position. We're going to solder both these 2 pins, and then I think I'm going to solder the anode side of the LED as well, just so that's sort of in position and ready to go. Then we can take all this out and solder everything else. Okay, so let's pull that out, and yeah, that's looking like a pretty good start. Hands are still a bit shaky. Maybe I should have waited until I was a bit better to do this, but oh well, we're in there now. So that's all complete. Very easy to do. Now we just need to solder on these sockets. So that one, guessing, yeah, that looks like that's for that one. So let's plug all this in and solder that all together. Cool. That was pretty painless. The I didn't get it on camera, but the sockets actually like push into place. So they basically hold themselves into place, and then you can just solder the contacts. So yeah, look at that. It's pretty neat, isn't it? Okay, so let's plug it back into a little enclosure here. That should all just snap back into position like so, and then that can be screwed back on. And then a little LED pokes out the end. Yeah, that's really neat. So I was given a little bit of a sheath thing to basically intertwine the audio and video cables. So it's not really explained in the instructions on how to do that. The instructions are actually a little bit out of date, but I was hoping I can just sort of figure it out. So let's unwind these. Probably be easier if we do it while it's plugged in, I would imagine. So let's do exactly that. Do I have audio? Do I have audio? Sorry, I just had to check. I realized I forgot to do an audio check. I'm worried that one of these days I'm going to just start recording and start yabbering on and the microphone's turned off and I'll have to do it again. So let's hope that doesn't happen. But I can see audio waves. Hooray! Alright, how does this... What in the world am I supposed to do with this? I'm sure it's painfully obvious to anyone who knows how to do it, but... Like, what? Do I... I don't know. Honestly, I feel a little bit off. I think I'm just going to go plug all this in and just see if it works and then figure this out later. So this definitely does look pretty jank. As you can see there, it's sort of just hanging off there like, how you doing? But it is what it is. And as you can see, it is working, but unfortunately the sound has stopped working because of course it has. I know it's on the Game Gear side as well because when I use it in handheld mode, there's no sound coming out of the internal speaker either. So I won't just show, I'm just plugging this in and showing it on camera just to show you that it has worked. But now we'll jump on the computer and we'll compare this to footage I recorded when with composite and we'll see how they compare. Just a quick detour if anyone was wondering what the end result looked like. And it's this. I'm not proud of myself, but it is what it is. So if you have an issue with it, take it to the union. So just a bit of an addendum when I said the audio wasn't working. It turns out that the power lead into the audio circuit just wasn't plugged in properly. Super easy fix. Pretty relieving, really. However, the audio is still quite low, and it was before I did this mod. I noticed I haven't replaced the capacitors on the audio circuit, so it sounds like I'll be doing that soon. Regardless, it works well, and the change in quality is just nuts. So we'll start with Mortal Kombat 2 here, and we'll just do a comparison on the menus real quick. Turn on the RGB, and it's day and night. It was incredibly blurry before. I wouldn't say the colors particularly become any more vibrant or anything. I guess they're a bit dull in composite, but moving over to the SCART cable, it's nuts, especially in the gameplay segment here. You can actually see what's going on, especially with it blown up to a 4K resolution. It just looks so much better in RGB. So we'll do a few more comparisons as I'm talking, but I'm really glad that I did this mod. It's been sitting there for 4 years. I didn't have an OSSC or anything like that back then, but I have the resources and the infrastructure, I guess, in the retro gaming room to make RGB happen, so super chuffed. That cable, like I said, you do need to get that exact cable. I guess that's probably what confused me for a while because the jack is just so weird. I actually had to email etim and ask him which cable I needed, and of course I'm blind. It's right there on the page. It tells you which cable to buy, which is of course the kit, which I've just been showing throughout this entire video. But like, this is a game changer. It just doesn't seem like the Game Gear to me. It's just much higher quality. It's like if they released a Game Gear 2 almost. But yeah, I won't keep you much longer. That is the end of this video. Thanks for watching. Still got at least 2 more projects in this series I can think of off the top of my head, so stay tuned for that. As you can see, I just haven't really been in the mood for scripted sort of videos at the moment. But I am working on them at the moment. There are some in the pipeline, but for now I'm just going to concentrate on these and we'll we'll see how we go with the other videos, and I need to cough. Anyway, so I'll leave it there. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.